The pale blue glow of computer screens illuminated Dr. Ju Kim's face as she stared at the anomalous signal patterns. 3 days ago, the Deep Space Listening Array had detected something unmistakably artificial coming from beyond the Kuiper Belt. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she couldn't look away from what might be the most important discovery in human history. "Director Park, you need to see this," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Director Doyen Park hurried across the room. His weathered face tightened as he leaned over her shoulder, processing what he was seeing on the screen. "Is that a message?" And we've translated it. Ju pulled up another screen showing complex patterns that had been decoded into text. "It's from something calling itself the Galactic Hegemony. They're coming to Earth, and they're not asking permission." Director Park removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Are you absolutely certain about this translation? The pattern matches no known natural phenomenon. The message repeats every 42 seconds. The math is universal." Ju pointed to the decoded symbols. "They'll be here in less than a month." Within days, the United Nations convened an emergency session. The news had spread like wildfire across the globe, causing panic in some regions and disbelief in others. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York as President Haejin Ryu of the newly formed Earth Defense Council addressed the assembly. "We face an existential threat," she announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But humanity will not bow to intimidation. We will stand united." The speech was broadcast worldwide. In bars and living rooms, in town squares and subway stations, people watched with bated breath. Some prayed. Others stockpiled supplies. Military forces around the world were placed on high alert. In a research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Ju worked tirelessly alongside her team. She had discovered something about Earth's magnetic field, something unique that the aliens might not anticipate. If her theories were correct, Earth had a natural defense system that could be weaponized. "Pass me the data set," she said to her assistant, Tae-Woo Lee. They had been working non-stop for 18 hours. "You should rest," Tae-Woo suggested, handing her the tablet. "I'll rest when we're safe," Ju replied, taking a sip from her 5th cup of coffee. "Or when we're dead. Either way, I won't need sleep then." The facility buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers from around the world pooled their knowledge. What they lacked in alien technology they'd made up for in desperation and ingenuity. Ju's breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m., when most of her team had finally succumbed to exhaustion. She was mapping the fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field when she noticed a pattern, a resonance frequency that could potentially disrupt electronic systems. If the aliens used anything similar to Earth technology, this could be their weakness. She woke Tae-Woo, who had fallen asleep at his desk. "I think I found it," she whispered, not wanting to disturb the others just yet. "Look at this harmonic pattern." Tae-Woo blinked at the screen, his tired mind slowly processing what he was seeing. "This could work," he said, suddenly wide awake. "But we'd need to amplify it considerably." "I know. And we'd need to build emitters at strategic points around the globe. That would take months. We don't have months. We need to find shortcuts." They worked through the night, refining the theory and beginning designs for what they called Project Thunderstorm. By morning, they presented their findings to Director Park, who immediately arranged a video conference with President Ryu. 2 weeks later, as construction began on the first thunderstorm emitter, the world received another shock. "The hegemony ships have entered orbit," announced Tae-Woo, rushing into the lab. On the monitors, sleek metallic vessels appeared, dwarfing the International Space Station. There were 7 of them, each at least a kilometer long, positioned strategically around the planet. "They're early," Ju said, feeling her stomach drop. Their calculations had predicted at least another week before arrival. "Maybe they have better engines than we thought," Tae-Woo suggested weakly. Ju looked at their prototype, only half assembled and untested. "Then we'd better hurry," she replied, not looking up from her equations. A transmission from the lead ship broadcast on all frequencies and devices worldwide. The message was simple: prepare for assessment. Resistance is inadvisable. As global leaders scrambled to formulate a response, Juwu and her team worked frantically. They knew that humanity's survival might depend on completing Project Thunderstorm before the hegemony decided Earth's fate. "We need more time," Juwu muttered as she soldered connections in the prototype. Outside, the sky darkened as one of the alien ships moved into position directly above their location. Earth's first contact was not going as anyone had hoped, but Juwu was determined that it wouldn't be humanity's last stand. Admiral Jaehyuk Choi stood straight-backed in the designated meeting chamber. The room had been prepared according to the hegemony specifications. Temperature lowered to 15 degrees Celsius, lighting dimmed to what humans would consider twilight, and air composition altered with added argon. Despite the discomfort, Jaehyuk maintained perfect posture, refusing to show weakness. The air in the center of the room shimmered like heat waves rising from hot pavement. A figure materialized, tall, nearly 3 meters in height, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Most disturbing were its 6 eyes, arranged in a circular pattern around what might be called a head. The being wore no clothing, but its body was covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating. "I am Ambassador Kuhl of the hegemony," the being announced. Its voice came not from its body, but from a small device floating beside it. The voice was flat, emotionless, and perfectly translated. "Your world has been designated Resource Colony 7293. Your population will be relocated to appropriate habitation zones." Jaehyuk's expression remained neutral, though his heart pounded in his chest. He was the first human to speak directly with an alien, and it was threatening his species with extinction. "Earth rejects these terms. We are a sovereign world," he stated firmly. Kuhl's eyes blinked in sequence, a ripple of movement around its head. "Resistance is not a variable in our calculations. You have 3 Earth days to prepare your leadership for transition." "What exactly does relocation entail?" Jaehyuk asked, trying to gain more information. "Your species will be preserved in designated sectors on compatible worlds. Those with useful skills will be integrated into hegemony operations. The rest will maintain their existence in contained habitats. And if we refuse, refusal is not an option that exists." Kuhl's body shifted, colors flowing from blue to green. "We have processed 8,417 worlds into the hegemony. Your civilization ranks as primitive but salvageable. This is beneficial to you." Jaehyuk clenched his jaw. "We request more time to consider these terms. 1 Earth week. 3 days is sufficient. Preparations for resource extraction have already begun." With that, the ambassador's form shimmered and vanished, leaving Jaehyuk alone in the chilled dim room. After the ambassador departed, Jaehyuk contacted the EDC headquarters. The faces of Earth's unified leadership appeared on the screen, tense and waiting. "We need more time," he said. "President Ryu, the terms are as bad as we feared. They intend to strip mine Earth and place humans in what amount to zoos." President Heijin Ryu's face was grim. "Did you get any sense they might negotiate?" "None. They view us as a foregone conclusion." Jaehyuk glanced at another face on the screen. "Dr. Kim, where are we with Project Thunderstorm?" In her lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Juwu ran a hand through her disheveled hair. The dark circles under her eyes had deepened, and her lab coat was stained with coffee. Behind her, dozens of scientists worked frantically on various components. "Close. We're close, but we need at least a week," she said. "The emitters are functional, but our power supply can't sustain the field long enough to be effective. We're working on it around the clock." "You have 3 days," President Ryu said softly. "That's all the time they've given us." "We'll do what we can," Juwu promised, though her expression betrayed her doubt. That evening, as Juwu's team assembled the 5th prototype power core, the sky lit up outside their reinforced windows. Hegemony ships fired precision strikes against military bases in remote areas: Alaska, the Sahara, Siberia, the Australian outback. Each strike was surgical, destroying only military hardware and avoiding human casualties. Taewoo rushed into the lab, his face pale. "They're targeting our defense systems. The strikes are precise. They're taking out missile silos, aircraft hangars, naval ports." "It's a demonstration of power," Ju said, her fingers never stopping their work on the delicate circuitry before her. "They're showing us they could kill us all, but they're choosing not to. Yet." The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. Emergency channels worldwide broadcast footage of the attacks. Panic spread in major cities. Some people fled to the countryside, while others held impromptu prayer vigils in town squares. Military families waited fearfully for news of loved ones. In the lab, Ju made a breakthrough. "The problem is efficiency, not power," she said suddenly, looking up from her equations. "We've been trying to brute force this, but what we need is precision." She called her team together, explaining her new approach. Instead of generating a massive electromagnetic pulse that would require enormous power, they would create a focused field that resonated specifically with hegemony technology. "It's like finding the exact note that shatters a crystal glass," she explained. "We don't need a bomb. We need a tuning fork." As dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, Ju sent a message to President Ryu. "We might have a solution, but we'll need every power plant on Earth redirected to our emitters when the time comes." On the Hegemony flagship, Ambassador Kuehl reported to the extraction commander. "The humans are showing expected resistance behaviors. They will attempt defiance before accepting reality." "Has preliminary extraction begun?" the commander asked. "Yes. We have already removed 17,000 tons of rare earth elements from their oceans. They are unaware of the process." "Excellent. Continue monitoring. If they have not surrendered in 3 days, begin population control measures." On Earth, humanity prepared for its most desperate stand. The hegemony soldiers that landed outside Seoul were unprepared for Earth's gravity. Their tall, spindly bodies struggled under the pull of a planet heavier than their own. Their movements were sluggish. Their breathing labored behind their helmets. Still, their weapons were devastating. Energy pulses that could turn concrete to dust and metal to liquid. The first wave targeted Seoul's defensive perimeter, expecting a quick victory. What they found instead was an empty military base. The humans had evacuated, leaving behind only automated defenses that the aliens quickly neutralized. "Where are they?" hissed a hegemony squad leader through its translator. Scans showed thousands of defenders here. The answer came in the form of sudden attacks from storm drains, from behind abandoned vehicles, from the windows of seemingly empty buildings. The human defenders had not fled. They had hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Colonel Minji Kang watched from a concealed command post as his soldiers executed the carefully planned ambush. At 53, Minja had spent his entire adult life preparing for conventional warfare against neighboring nations. Never had he imagined fighting aliens. Yet here he was, directing humanity's defense against invaders from beyond the stars. "Target their breathing apparatus," he ordered over the secure communication line. "Their helmets are their weakness." His troops aimed for the tubes connecting the aliens' helmets to their backpacks. When punctured, the aliens gasped and collapsed, unable to process Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere. Between skirmishes, Minja gathered his unit commanders in an underground bunker. Maps of Seoul covered the walls, marked with alien positions and human strongholds. "They expect us to fight conventionally," he told his troops, pointing to the main roads where alien forces had established checkpoints. "But this is our home. We know every hill, every building, every sewer tunnel." A young lieutenant raised her hand. "Sir, their weapons outmatch ours. We can't win in a direct firefight." "We don't need to," Minja replied. "We just need to survive until Project Thunderstorm is ready. Each day we hold out is a victory." similar resistance erupted worldwide. In Nairobi, local forces used the terrain of the Great Rift Valley to ambush alien patrols. In Rio de Janeiro, defenders used the dense urban landscape of the favelas to trap and isolate enemy units. In Jakarta, fishing boats launched nighttime raids against alien positions along the coast. Humans proved surprisingly difficult to subdue. Their smaller size, which the hegemony had considered a disadvantage, allowed them to hide in spaces the aliens couldn't access. Their knowledge of local environments gave them countless tactical advantages. Most importantly, they were fighting for their homes, their families, their very existence. At her lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Zhu watched as the prototype for Project Thunderstorm hummed to life. The device wasn't much to look at. A tangle of wires and coils surrounding a core of rare earth metals, but it represented humanity's best hope. Stable at 40% capacity, reported Tewu, monitoring the readouts. That's 10% better than yesterday. We need at least 80% for a global effect, Zhu reminded him. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, but adrenaline kept her focused. President Ryu visited the lab that afternoon, accompanied by a security detail. Her usual polished appearance had given way to practical clothing and tired eyes. "Show me," she said simply. Zhu activated the prototype, causing nearby electronic equipment to flicker. Earth's magnetic field has properties the hegemony doesn't understand, she explained to President Ryu. We can use it to disrupt their technology on a planetary scale. The magnetic field surrounds the entire planet, Tewu added. Once we activate our emitters, there will be nowhere for them to hide. Unless they retreat to space, President Ryu noted. Even then, the field extends thousands of kilometers beyond our atmosphere, Zhu said. Their ships would need to retreat well past the moon to escape the effect. How soon? The president asked. 2 more days. Maybe 3. President Ryu nodded grimly. Keep working. I'll make sure you get whatever you need. Meanwhile, aboard the Hegemony command ship, Commander Suk reviewed the casualty reports with growing concern. The circular arrangement of eyes on her face contracted, the alien equivalent of a frown. Impossible, she muttered, checking the figures again. Her second-in-command waited silently, aware of the commander's dangerous mood. Finally, Suk activated the long-range communicator. This is Commander Suk to Hegemony Central Command. I am requesting immediate reinforcements for Colony Acquisition 7293. The response was immediate and questioning. The indigenous species displays unexpected adaptability, she reported, her pride clearly wounded. Their physiology is well suited to resist our standard pacification methods. They utilize primitive weapons but with unusual effectiveness. Our casualties exceed projected models by 287%. A silence from Central Command was telling. We require additional troops and modified weaponry. Suk continued. The current force is insufficient. As she waited for a response, Suk watched the tactical display showing human resistance flaring up across the planet. Every extinguished point seemed to create 2 more. For the first time in her long career, she felt something unfamiliar, doubt. On Earth, as night fell over Seoul, Colonel Minja led a daring raid to capture alien technology. They needed to buy time, just a little more time, for humanity's last, best hope to be ready. Zhu stood with Tewu as technicians installed the final thunderstorm node in the facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion and the knowledge that humanity's fate would be decided in the next few minutes. She had not slept in almost 3 days. All stations report ready, said Tewu, looking up from his tablet. His face was pale and drawn, but his eyes burned with determination. The network is complete. Around the world, similar devices have been positioned at strategic locations, in the Amazon rainforest, beneath the ice of Antarctica, in the deserts of Africa, and in hardened bunkers across Asia and Europe. Each node was connected to the nearest power plants, which had been modified to channel their entire output into the thunderstorm network when activated. Global power reserves are at maximum, reported a technician. We're ready. President Ryu's face appeared on the main screen. Dr. Kim, you have a go. May God be with us all. Ju took a deep breath and nodded. This was the moment she had worked toward since detecting that first alien signal. If she was wrong, if her calculations were off by even a small margin, Earth would fall. Activating in 3, 2, 1. Ju pressed her hand against the scanner, authorizing the system startup. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the lights dimmed momentarily as power surged into the thunderstorm network. A low hum filled the room, building in intensity until the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Power flow stable, Taewoo called out. Field generation at 70% and rising. Outside, the sky took on a faint greenish tinge as Earth's magnetic field responded to the artificial stimulation. The effect was beautiful, like a global aurora borealis. But the true impact was happening in orbit and across the planet's surface. The effect was immediate and global. Hegemony ships lost power, their engines sputtering out as critical systems failed. Their weapons systems went offline, targeting computers reset in endless loops. Their communications dissolved into static. In Seoul, Colonel Minjae watched in amazement as the alien soldiers stumbled, their armor suddenly dead weight on their bodies. Their weapons became useless pieces of metal. Even their translation devices failed, reducing their commands to incomprehensible clicks and whistles. "It's working," he whispered, then raised his voice to his troops. "It's working. Move in now." Similar scenes played out across Earth as human defenders seized the opportunity, overwhelming the suddenly vulnerable invaders. In the EDC headquarters, screens showed hegemony ships drifting in orbit, their lights flickering as emergency systems struggled to maintain basic functions. A cheer went up from the staff, quickly silenced as a transmission cut through the celebration. Ambassador Kuehl's hologram flickered as he addressed the emergency EDC session. Unlike his previous appearances, he seemed diminished, his colors muted and his posture less imposing. "This defiance is unprecedented," he said, voice crackling with interference. "The hegemony has conquered thousands of worlds. Your resistance is merely prolonging the inevitable. When our reinforcements arrive." President Ryu stepped forward, interrupting the alien diplomat. "This is our home," she said firmly, "and you are not welcome." She turned to the military officers in the room. "Begin the counterattack. Use everything we've captured." The counterattack began within hours. In the weeks of fighting, humans had captured and studied alien technology. Engineers and scientists had worked alongside soldiers to understand and adapt these weapons. Now, with the hegemony systems compromised by thunderstorm, Earth's forces had the advantage. In orbit, a hastily assembled fleet of modified Earth vessels approached the disabled alien ships. Some were repurposed satellites, others were experimental spacecraft pressed into military service. All were now armed with adapted hegemony weapons. Admiral Jae-hyuk Choi directed the assault from a converted space station. "Focus fire on their flagship," he ordered. "All other vessels are secondary targets." The Earth ship swarmed the massive hegemony command vessel like angry bees. Its defensive shields, weakened by the thunderstorm effect, flickered and failed under concentrated fire. Inside the flagship, Commander Suk ordered emergency evacuation pods prepared. "This cannot be happening," she hissed to her subordinates. "No primitive species has ever." Her words were cut short as a direct hit breached the ship's reactor containment. The flagship's destruction began with a small bright point of light near its center, which quickly expanded into a blinding explosion. The blast rippled through space, damaging nearby hegemony vessels and scattering debris across Earth's orbit. The explosion was visible from the ground, a new, short-lived star in Earth's night sky. In her lab, Ju watched the distant flash through a reinforced window. A single tear traced down her cheek, not from sadness, but from relief and hope. "Did we just win?" Taewoo asked quietly, standing beside her. "Not yet," Ju answered. But we've shown them something they've never seen before. What's that? That Earth fights back. The hegemony retreat was chaotic and complete. The remaining alien ships, struggling with damaged systems, pulled away from Earth orbit in disarray. Several crashed into the moon, creating new craters that would be visible for generations. Others managed to limp away toward the outer solar system, disappearing from Earth's tracking systems. For the first time in centuries, the galactic hegemony had failed to conquer a world. The weeks that followed were filled with both celebration and hard work. Earth had suffered significant damage. Major cities bore the scars of alien weapons. Millions of people had been displaced, and hundreds of thousands had died in the fighting. But the planet remained free, and humanity had discovered something important about itself. When faced with extinction, petty differences disappeared. 6 months later, Dr. Ju Kim found herself addressing the United Nations. The Grand Hall was packed with delegates from every nation. Her simple lab coat contrasted sharply with the formal attire around her, but no one would question her right to speak. She had become a global hero, though she rejected the title whenever it was used. The technology we developed to defend Earth has applications beyond warfare, she explained, her voice calm and clear. We've created a propulsion system based on magnetic field manipulation. We can reach nearby stars within years, not centuries. On the large screen behind her, technical diagrams appeared, showing how the thunderstorm technology could be adapted to push vessels through space at incredible speeds. The delegates murmured in amazement. With what we've learned from examining hegemony vessels, combined with our own innovations, we can begin exploring our stellar neighborhood immediately, Ju continued. We don't need to wait for them to come to us again. A tall figure stepped forward to join her at the podium. Many in the audience gasped or shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Kuehl, his iridescent skin now dulled with age or stress, stood beside Ju. Once Earth's would-be conqueror, he was now a defector and ally. The hegemony's control is already weakening, Kuehl announced, his translator device conveying his clicks and whistles into human language. 17 worlds have risen in rebellion since your victory. They call Earth the Spark. He paused, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. I was wrong about your species. The hegemony was wrong. You are not primitive. You are remarkable. President Ryu rose from her seat and approached the podium. Unlike Ju, she had aged visibly in the past months, the stress of leading Earth through its darkest hours etched into her face. Then we will honor that name, she said solemnly. Earth will not simply defend itself. We will help liberate others. The message of freedom will spread throughout the stars. The assembly erupted in applause, some delegates crying openly. The species that had faced extinction was now planning to challenge a galactic empire. In the months that followed, a new fleet took shape in Earth orbit. Unlike the desperate vessels of the counterattack, these ships were purpose-built, combining Earth innovation with adapted alien technology. They were exploration vessels, but also carried the means to defend themselves and others. On the day of the first launch, crowds gathered at viewing sites around the world. The event was broadcast globally, with billions watching as humanity prepared to take its first intentional step into the wider galaxy. As the first Earth ships prepared to venture beyond the solar system, they carried a simple message translated into every language the hegemony had ever encountered. Tyranny will not be tolerated. All beings deserve freedom. Ju watched from the observation deck of the orbital station as the Starship Defender prepared for its maiden voyage. The sleek vessel gleamed in the sunlight, its hull decorated with the flags of all Earth nations alongside a new symbol, a blue and green spark against the black of space. Captain Hyunwoo Moon stood on the bridge, visible through the wide viewport. He caught Juwoo's eye and saluted smartly. Though they were too far apart for direct communication, the station's systems relayed his voice to her. Ready to make history, Doctor, he called, his excitement evident despite the formality of the occasion. Juwoo smiled, thinking of everything humanity had endured and overcome. The signal that had seemed like a death sentence had instead become the catalyst for humanity's greatest achievement. "We already have," she replied. "Now we're just sharing it with the galaxy." As the Defender's engines flared to life, Juwu thought about the countless species still living under hegemony control. Soon they would learn that somewhere, on a small blue planet once designated as Resource Colony 7293, someone had said no to the Empire and won. Earth's resistance had become the galaxy's hope. The spark had been lit, and nothing would extinguish it now. The end.